Okay, one of the first things I want to show you is when you walk in the door, behind these aprons, I don't really have a better place for them, there is a switch here that says green for start and red for stop. This is our dust collection system. So when we use the joiner today, we want to use that dust collection system. You can see the joiner here, and then you can see the dust collection system tube here, and that's going to collect all the dust in our joiner. Okay, so we have the second step to get wood ready, which is joint a face. I'm just pointing to my face here to help you remember. Remember, the face of the wood is this area here, this flat area, and we have two faces, 1 and 2. We're just going to joint one face though. Make sure you remember that, only one face, because the planer will do the other face for us, okay? So the joiner is used to straighten and smooth and square up a piece of wood. This piece of wood is in rough form, okay? It's not the same thickness. The faces are very rough, okay? It's not square. When we're all said and done with the piece of wood, it'll look nice and flat. The thickness will be the same, okay? The edges will be cleaned up. And this is called the edge of the wood, okay? This is called the end grain, all right? If you look carefully at this end grain, you can kind of see the grain of the wood when it was in tree form, because it was rings. So I darken up the rings, and you can kind of see exactly, this was once, of course, a tree, and when they cut it out, there's the ring still left from the wood, and each ring tells how old a piece of wood is, or how old a tree is, okay? One thing you need to know about end grain is it's like a bunch of straws packed together really tightly, okay? And so when we talk about that later, you'll understand why we don't joint end grain, okay? Because the straws will break out. But we can joint faces just fine, and we can joint edges, awesome. We never joint end grain. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. All right, following along in your book, general safety number 1, we wear glasses and roll up our sleeves. Number 2, don't let your hands cross over the blade without a push stick or moving your hands so they don't cross over the blade. So the blade's hidden behind this guard here. You can see the blade. It has a lot of like tiny razors, okay, that will cut the wood. I'll go ahead and turn it on to see what it sounds like here. You can see how it's turning here. Turning pretty fast and cut that wood there. So we don't want our hands to cross over the blade ever, okay? And it even says right here at the very top, caution, keep hands clear of cutter head, okay? So if you're joining long boards, a tail off person would do something like this, and they would hold and support the wood. They would not tug and they would not twist. They're just supporting the wood. We're letting the operator push the wood through. All we're doing is being like an outboard stand all the way out. And this will apply to any tool that we use throughout the shop. It'll say that often in the safety tests. Here are the parts to the joiner. So we have the in feed table, we have the out feed table. We're on the left side here, and then the right side over here. According to your book, we're going to stand on the left side, okay? I usually stand in line with the on and off switch. That's usually kind of where I stand. So that way I'm a little bit closer to the blade, but I'm not like too far away, okay? The next one says never joint end grain. Okay, end grain is very dangerous to joint. We need at least 12 inches here. This is nowhere near 12 inches, okay? You can see here it's pretty short. So that's gonna be pretty dangerous, okay? Number 2, it's very hard to joint, because remember all those straws are packed together? If you look at the end of a piece of wood, you'll see little holes, okay? And that's where the nutrient of the ground came to the tree. So if you were to joint this end grain and going across here, as soon as it got to the end of those straws, it's gonna splay out those straws. It's gonna break them all off. They're all gonna break out. It's gonna ruin your wood, okay? Plus, usually end grain is not 12 inches wide. So that's why end grain is very dangerous to joint. And then number 6 says the minimum length of the wood is 12 inches that can be run through the joiner. So over here, I have a 12-inch mark here. You can check your wood to see whether or not you're 12 inches long, and this one is plenty long enough here, okay? The reason why they want 12 inches is they want to give at least basically 4 inches before the blade and 4 inches after the blade to put your hands, okay? The blade's about 4 inches wide, so 4 plus 4 plus 4, you see that's 12. That's the minimum length for our joiner. Smallest sizes of wood you can put through the joiner, no less than 1/2 inch thickness, so we don't want to put anything less than half. No less than 2 inches wide, okay, so this is about 2 inches wide here. And of course, no less than 12 inches long. So those are your pretty important measurements. And then any wood that is less than 4 inches in width, we're going to use something called a push stick. And the push stick is going to push that through there so we don't get our hands too close to the blade. So in other words, we don't want to push this through with our hands this way. Our hands will be too close to the blade. We're going to use a push stick for this purpose here to get it pushed through. We can adjust blade exposure, how much blade is exposed, and we tend to keep our fence in one location since we have a guard covering it, okay? But this can move back and forth. We can also adjust the infeed table down or up so we can get a deeper depth of cut, but for ours we keep it at the same point. And the last thing we can do is we can also adjust the fence to be at an angle. So this fence can be slid at different angles here. But pretty much 90% of the time we use the fence at a 90-degree angle, we keep the same depth of cut, and we keep the same blade exposure. And this keeps it simple and very easy for us to remember. All right, so our second step to use the joiner is to join a face. Well, we have 2 faces. Which one should we do? I see this one has kind of a bump in there, or kind of a cutout. So I'm going to save that one for the planer. Okay, I'm going to do our best face. And if you look at our face a little closer, we'll see it's not very flat. Okay, I laid our wood on a flat surface here, and you can see it has a wobble to it. If you look at the ends here, you can see it's not flat here. And that's what the joiner will take care of. It'll flatten out that face out for us. Okay, so we really, when we're all said and done, we don't want any wobble or warp or bow. That's going to take care of it for us. Well, I mentioned the push stick, which is hanging up here by the joiner. We'll also use a push block when doing face joining. And it's labeled push block, and it's something that we use a little different for face joining. Okay? So we'll use this for the face, and these are for this one for the edges. Join a face, check blade exposure. Let's make sure we have enough blade exposed, and we do. Should be just fine for us. We can see we have enough blade. Okay? Use a push block. We got it ready. We're going to stand so we don't have to lean over the blade, run the wood through until smooth and flat. Maximum depth of cut will be 1/16 of an inch. We have this set up for 1/32, which is less than 1/16, which is perfectly safe. It'll take us a little longer to run things through, but we'll be safer doing it. Okay, but the maximum depth of cut for the test is 1/16 of an inch. To turn it on, I'm going to push the green button right here in the middle. Okay, let it come to full speed. I'm going to hold the push block with my left hand, holding this little knob, and the right hand holding this little handle. And it has a kind of a grippy surface on the bottom here. Okay, I'm going to push that through, all right, and take care of that face. Now, it might not be done the first time, but I'll show you after each time I run it what it looks like. So we got a little bit down the center there, but we still have these parts here that are not done. We're almost done. We got one more part left there to get. Okay, you remember how much wibbly wobbly it was? And take a look now, it's perfectly flat. No wibbles, no wobbles. I can push on any corner and it's fine. And that's what the joiner does for us. It takes care of that flat face there and makes it nice and flat for us. All right, after I'm done joining the face, I mark a J on it. And you'll do this in pencil. I did it in pen so you can see it better. But that tells me I have a jointed face there. And then you're saying, wait, what about the other face? We'll take that to the planer and we'll plane that down, and the knives will cut across here and make it the same thickness. Then we can come back and do step 4, which is join an edge. So that's using the joiner again. So step 1 is rough cut to length. Step 2 is join a face. Step 3 is to plane to thickness. Step 4 is to joint an edge. I already have a piece of wood, marked with a J. I've already planed it to the same thickness. You can see it's pretty much uniform all the way down. And so now I can join an edge here and get the edge jointed. So let's talk about edge joining. It's just a little bit different than face joining. Okay, for edge joining, as long as the piece of wood is above the fence, we can just use our hands. And I'll show you how to use your hands safely, okay? Because this fence is 4 inches tall. And so that keeps your fingers 4 inches away. That's the key number for the joiner. Keep your fingers 4 inches away. The next thing to check to see if the fence is square. And you want to push the edge, wooden edge on the table and the blade against there. And you can kind of see there, I don't have any gaps. It looks really good. Okay, let me tilt this around here. Actually, I'm a little bit out of square. If you take a look there, I just have a little bit of a gap there in the bottom left-hand corner. So that's good to see because we don't want that gap. All right, through the magic photography, I have it fixed. Now it is square. So now I can run the edge through and get that squared up. So now I'll have two faces kind of cleaned up, one by the joiner, one by the planer. And now we need to work on two edges. Edge joint, you need to have your fingers push it against the piece of wood against the fence. If you have it come away from the fence, you can see we're not going to get a square cut. I usually push where this little dot is on the guard, okay? This little dot right here kind of tells me that's what I want to push right here. My fingers are going to slide through, okay? In other words, they're going to slide, let the piece of wood slide. So the fingers don't move, the wood slides through, okay? But I'm keeping those fingers all the time pushing against the fence. And when I get too close to the blade, which I'm getting pretty close right now, I'm going to rotate or transfer my fingers over to this side of the blade guard and then finish it out, okay? My top hand is going to be, my right hand is going to be pushing the wood through, and I kind of have most of my hand kind of right along this fence here, okay? I don't have it hanging down here like this. That's too close to the blade. So it's mainly just kind of riding along the top there. So I'll do it the whole thing real quick as one thing. So most of my hand's over here. My fingers are pushing about where the little knob is here. And sliding through, transfer. The right hand can stay all the way through there because we're 4 inches away. If it wasn't wide enough, like this piece of wood is not, okay, then you would use a push stick, okay? And again, your fingers would still push against the fence. Your left-hand fingers push against the fence, the wood would push through, and your fingers will slide. But this push stick will do the work of pushing the piece of wood through. It will still transfer our fingers over. All right, here we go. Let's join an edge. Now this is step 4 in our 7 steps. Turn on the saw. Hold my finger against here. My other hand's pushing through. I'm running out of wood here. Transfer over. And most of the time you just need to do it once to get it done right. Okay, let's check that out. Pushing the fence against the face here. Okay, the wooden part. And I have no gaps there. If you need to do it again, of course, do it again. But once I have this done, once I have that done though, I make this 90-degree mark there. You can see that tells me I have a jointed edge. So now I have a J marked for the jointed face, and I have the 90-degree mark. That'll help us when we go to the table saw. I want you to notice that the outfeed table doesn't move. It's set to the same height as the blades. So the blades and the outfeed table are set. And if you can see here, there's a small gap. And the infeed table, that's how much we're cutting off. That gap represents how much we're cutting off. So the infeed table can move, the outfeed table never moves, and it's set to the height of the blades. The infeed table and the outfeed table will never be the same height. One has to be lower than the other, otherwise we won't do any cutting. Keep fingers 4 inches away from the blade. Feed wood with the grain, so the grain is going this way. We'll feed the wood in that same direction, okay? We make any adjustments on this machine with the machine off. Watch for loose knots. If you see something like this in your wood and it's loose, this is not very loose. You can see it's pretty tight in there, but I still probably wouldn't run this through. This is where a branch was on a tree. Watch for loose knots. And last, if the wood is bowed, and you can see this is a pretty big bow here. I got a big gap here. You want the arch part of the wood facing up, okay? Not down. Take a look, I'll turn it over. If I turn it down, I only have one point of contact on the table, and I have those two are off. But if I turn it around, I have 2 points of contact on the table, and it makes it a little bit more stable for that. Okay? The joiner is a fun tool to use. Use it safely, use it wisely. That's the end of this video.